Because remember, you can't say efficiency without saying fishin' or sea. Hey guys, welcome to E-Fishin-Sea, a series about tips and tricks to improve your fishing setup and to help you catch more fish. Because remember, you can't say efficiency without saying fishin' or sea. You know, the ocean. Today we're going to talk about something called a Cuban Yo-Yo. Like, what's that? It's basically a circle, that you hold and wrap line around. It's actually used for hand lining fishing because you can wrap line around it easily. You hold it with your hand so you have something to grip so you're not just grabbing line, which would be really uncomfortable even with gloves. And this device, you might say, is shaped to allow you to put line on, but also to feed line out very easily should the fish, run or take off. But what we're using it for is to control our shock lines in this case. When I was Wahoo fishing and I started editing those videos, I noticed that I had a lot of tangles to deal with. And it was really taking up a lot of time. I mean, you don't think about how much time something like that takes up until you're like staring at it and saying like, man, I spent 10 minutes on this or 15 minutes on this or whatever. And on our trips, a lot of times there's not very many people. So sometimes it's just me putting all 4 or 5 lines back. So the Cuban Yo-Yo, what I'll do is I'll wrap my shock leaders around that. I used to just coil them up and then like kind of wrap it around the line and it would hold in place. Or I would even coil it up and put rubber bands around it so that it didn't get wrapped up. But when I took it out, and kind of fed it down, a lot of times it would curl around itself and you'd have all this line at your feet, 20, 30 feet of that shock leader, and that would get tangled in your lure with the big hooks or in the weight, and it was really inefficient. But now what I'll do is I'll just wrap my shock leader around that Cuban Yo-Yo and I'll leave the 2 ends exposed. So when I'm ready, I can just hook up my big lure and I can hook up the weight to the other end and then hook it to the line. And then while it's all still on the yo-yo, I just feed it out and it just peels right off. It's in the water, no tangles, much quicker. Also, I'll do the same thing when we get a fish in. Because remember, when a fish bites, that usually means that they're feeding, and there's more fish in the area. So when you do bring in your lures, you want to be able to get them back out really fast because you're probably missing the bite. The quicker you can get the fish in, get the lures back out and fishing, the more likely you'll hook up. So when we bring a fish in, I'll grab it straight at the weight and I'll wrap everything, just pull it onto that yo-yo, all the way up to the lure. That means I've got the weight and the lure and everything organized on this yo-yo, so it's not just laying loose around the boat, which is how we used to do it, which is a terrible idea. And now when I'm ready to put it back out, I got it all right there. I can just put everything in a bucket and it won't get tangled together. You just stack them on top of each other and then just feed them back out and you're back fishing, within, you got that line out in 30 seconds. I mean, it's fast. So another thing you can use the Cuban Yo-Yo for is to wire in the fish. Say you got your Wahoo, right? What I would do, you get your shock leader, I would take my trolling weight, torpedo weight, and I would hand it to the angler. So they got the rod, maybe in a rod hold, and they're holding that. Then what I would do is I would grab this and I'd take my yo-yo like this and I'd put it here and I'd get my first wrap around it like that. And then I have something strong to grip with. And as I pull the fish in, I can just go like that. And if he's fighting hard, I've got something gripping this hand, just kind of guiding. I'd still wear a glove. You can just bring the fish all the way in. You can get a bigger yo-yo if you want to pull more in at a time. There's a 6-inch, you can get a 9-inch. And then, if the fish does take off, you just, feed them that line. The angler's going to let go of the weight, and, they'll fight them back up. But, it's pretty good. It beats having to be like, this, because there's not a lot of grip, and it's wet. And, you can wear gloves, and you should wear gloves. But even with gloves, it's still not as comfortable as the yo-yo. So it's just something to think about, maybe something you might want to try. You might like it, maybe you're happy doing this, if so, good for you. So that's your tip for the day, guys. The Cuban Yo-Yo. Use it to keep your lines more organized. You can put them out much quicker, bring them in quick, and bring fish in. So it's a pretty cool little tool. If you guys got any other questions about it, or maybe some other tips, I'm sure there's a lot of ways you can use this. Let me know. Comment below so other people can learn some cool stuff about the Cuban Yo-Yo. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember to subscribe, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff, and we'll see you next time.